All right, guys, let's do our while loops then. So we're going to start off. It's going to look a little advanced because what we're going to do is we're going to define, we're going to define a function, okay? And the program we're going to write today, it's pretty stupid, and I actually did that on purpose because I want to also use this opportunity to discuss things we could do to improve this, to make it more functional and user-friendly, okay? But let's go ahead and start with utilizing our while loops here. So I'm going to make a function called guesser. Okay, so I'm going to say def guesser, and I am going to give this a parameter, which we're just going to, it's just a single parameter that I'm going to call in this case. Okay, so when we call this function later, we'll have to put something in for n. We'll be using a number, specifically an integer that we're going to request from the user. Okay, so to give you a view into the future here, I'm going to say we're going to have a little guessing game here, and we want the user to determine how many guesses they get to have. So if you want 20 guesses, n will be 20. If you want 3 guesses, n will be 3. Okay, but I want the user to define that, which is why at the moment I'm just putting it in as parameter n. Okay, all right, now I'm going to set this arbitrary variable. We'll stick with x since that's easy, and I'm going to set x to being 0. And essentially what x is the guess number. What guess number have I done, right? At this point, I haven't made any guesses, so we're going to start everybody out making 0 guesses, okay? That's not the number they get to have. That's the number of guesses they've actually made. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my while loop. This is, you use them just like you would a for loop, except that while loops don't have sort of a predetermined number of times they're going to go through the loop or the iteration, okay? So in a for loop, we might make it random. We might give it a range. We might give it a list. In this case, we don't want it to do that. It's just we're gonna give it a conditional. While some condition is being met, it's just going to loop again and again and again, okay? If that condition is for some reason not met, then it's gonna kick you out of the loop, okay? So it's a way you can create a loop that doesn't have sort of a definite time frame or number of iterations attached to it. It's sort of up to how the person does. A good application of this would be like in a video game, right? Where as long as you've got a health bar, your character's still gonna go, right? But the minute health reaches 0, game's over, right? So that's the theory sort of we're working on. Does that make sense? Does that kind of make sense? Right? We don't want to give you just X number of times you can press the A button before the game's over, right? We don't want to predetermine that. We want you to keep mashing that button until something is met that would allow the game to be over. Okay, so what I'm going to say here is while x is less than n, whoops, this is wrong. While x is less than n, there we go. We're going to have something happening here. All right, so I do need to put a colon on this. So in this case, whatever my parameter n is, as long as x is less than that, this loop is going to continue on and on and on. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to request some information. I'm going to say guess equals, and I'm going to ask for information from the user here. So I'm going to put an input, and I'm just going to ask it something really stupid like, what is my favorite color? Okay. So that is, whoops, better end with my quotes there. So my input is, what is my favorite color? And you can put whatever you want in here. All right. So let's say we determine what our favorite color is. So we could also make that randomized and stuff, but we'll get into that later. Okay. So I'm asking for a variable guess is the input, whatever the user inputs here. So if you think it's yellow, you type in yellow, right? If you think it's green, you type in green. All right. Now, if the guess equals, notice I put 2 equal signs in here, right? If the guess equals, in quotes, blue, because we're going to be using strings here. I did that purposefully just so we're not always dealing with numbers or integers, okay? So if the guess is blue, or in this case, if maybe people really like capitalizing things, so maybe I'll count it as if it equals blue, if it equals that, or that. All right, then I'm going to print something out here. Now this is going to be a chatterbox function, as you guys are going to see. I'm going to say, you guessed it. Yay. Blue is my favorite color. All right. So that's if they guess it right. Okay? That's pretty straightforward, hopefully. Okay. Now, what if we get it wrong? What do we do? Okay? Now what I'm wanting is I'm wanting only a certain number of guesses allowed. So say they wanted 5 guesses. Okay. I need to account for that. I need to get this x variable to constantly calculate or add up the number of times I've guessed so that it's always evaluating that. So if I say my n was 5, x equals 0, while x is less than 5, it's going to go through the loop again. Okay? So I need to make it so that if I guess it wrong, like obviously if I guess it right, I'm like sort of done, right? So in order to kick it out of the loop, I'm going to say x equals 5. Okay. Oh, not x equals 5, right? I don't want that. Yeah, I do. X equals um, not 5, but n, right? There we go. That's what I want. So I'm going to just automatically set x to whatever n was, and that'll kick me out of the loop, okay? All right, what else? If I get it wrong, I don't guess it right, then I need to account for that. So what I'm going to do is I am going to say, I'll just print out a function here so we know we didn't get it right. Say no. I'm going to put the word guess, right? Whatever word they put in there. So if they type red, it'll say no red, right? Guess M. What am I doing? Is not my favorite color. There we go. That looks good. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to account for that guess. Okay. So how many guesses did I have? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say x equals x plus 1. That just basically will keep track. So now when it runs through that loop, x is going to equal 1. And it'll go x1 is less than 5, right? That's true, so we're going to go through the loop again, right? Now, after I've guessed 5 times, right, this will be 5 less than 5, which is not true, and so it'll actually kick us out of the loop at that point. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit more to this, just for grits and shins here, okay? So I'm going to back out of this while loop. So this is my entire while loop here. I'm going to put another if statement in here as well. I'm actually going to copy this if guess equals blue or blue. I'm going to paste that right here. Okay. And I'm just going to print something else if this is the case. Say, you did it. Yay. In less than n guesses. There we go. There. That way, whatever we put in for our number of guesses we want will show up there. So if I said 6 guesses, it'll say, yeah, you did it in less than 6 guesses. Okay? All right. Put my else in here. Print. Sorry, you couldn't manage in variable n guesses. All right. So that'll say, hey, if I didn't, if I got 6 guesses, it'll say, hey, you couldn't manage it in 6 guesses. Okay. That's going to be the end of our function there. Like I say, it is a chatterbox function. Not a great way to go. We'll see how to get around it. I just try to make them sometimes really painfully obvious when we're doing them in here. Okay. So there's my guesser. Now I need to call my function. But let's say in this case, I'm going to use another while loop because I would like for this to just repeat infinitely. Just as many times as I want to play the game. I don't want to have to keep hitting F5 over and over again. So we're going to use a while loop to make an infinite loop. Okay? And when I say an infinite loop in this case, it doesn't mean it's just going to run constantly and you're just going to see your screen fill up with information. That actually won't happen because of the nature of the fact that it's going to stop and wait for inputs. Okay? But I'm just going to do it here. So I'm going to say y equals 0. I'm going to set this other variable. Now note, I'm in the actual programming frame here. This is what's going to run initially, right? Because I defined this, so guesser is not going to run until I call on it to do so. And I'm just going to make a short little loop here that says while y equals 0, that we're going to call our function, okay? I'm not going to put anything in there to make y ever equal anything other than 0. And if I do that, this loop will just run forever, okay? So I'm just going to say y equals 0. While it equals 0, it's going to do this loop over and over again. Again, if I don't make any sort of parameter adjustment, that we'll never get out of that loop. We'll be in that loop infinitely, okay? But I'm going to ask for an input here. I'm going to ask for n because that's what I need to use as my parameter for guesser. And I'm going to make it an integer. I'm going to say input here, and I'm going to ask how many guesses do you want? Make sure you end with a double close parentheses. And then I'm going to call my function guesser, and I'm going to input n into there, right? So if I ask for 3 guesses, then everything in this definition, n will become 3, right? If I ask for 20, everything with n will become 20. All right. So we haven't been able to run this at all yet, right? Because if I had just a definition and hit run, nothing's going to happen. I had to be able to call that. So let's go ahead and try it out. Let's see if we made any mistakes here, which is totally possible. I'm going to hit OK. All right. And there it goes. It says, how many guesses do you want? I'm going to just start off small. I'm going to say I want 3 guesses. Hit enter. It says, what is my favorite color? Now, you and I, since we programmed this, we know what the favorite color is, right? It's blue. But let's just test it out. See if I put it in wrong, what it'll do. It'll say red. I'm going to say red. It says, no, red is not my favorite color. How about purple? It says, no, purple's not my favorite color. So I should just have one more guess, right? So let's try green. No, green is not my favorite color. Sorry, you couldn't manage in 3 guesses. All right, how many guesses do I want this time? Let's say I'm really confident in myself. I want 1 guess. Here we go. What is my favorite color? Blue. You guessed it. Blue is my favorite color. You did it in less than 1 guesses, right? That's, you got to work on my grammar, but you know we could write a program to adjust for that as well, right? We can code that in, and then it just keeps asking, how many questions do I want? I want 13, right? What's my favorite color? I don't know, pink. No, it's not pink. Try green again. No, yellow. Nope. What is another good color? Teal. Everybody loves teal. Nope, teal's not my favorite color. Blue. Oh, yeah, there we go. All right, I did it in less than 13 guesses. I should pat myself on the back, right? All right. And notice what it does, guys. It immediately goes back to how many guesses do you want? And that's because this is looping again and again and again. So let's go ahead and real quick just kind of revisit the direction things are going. When we read this, it immediately says y equals 0. While y is equal to 0, notice I've got the double, I have no idea what I was saying. Okay, notice that while I have the double, I'm actually saying while y is equal to 0. Here, this is not y equals 0, right? Variable y is assigned 0, okay? I asked for an input, which we're going to call n. How many guesses do you want? And then that goes into my guesser function. So again, if I put 3 here, it's going to say guesser 3. It's going to call my function up here, definition of guesser 3, x equals 3, while 0, in this case, x is 0, n is 3. While 0 is less than n, it's going to ask, what's my favorite color? Okay. If I say blue, it's going to say, yep, you guessed it. It's going to automatically set x to, in this case, I used 3, and it's going to kick me out of my loop. As soon as I get kicked out of this loop, I go to the next line of code, which is my if guess. And if I guessed it right, it's going to still have that information in there. It'll say, yep, you did it in less than 3 guesses. If I ran through and this was not correct, it's going to go to the else. It's going to say x is x plus 1. So in this case, 0 plus 1. X would be 1. 1 is less than 3. That's true, so it's going to ask for my input again. Say I got it wrong again. It's now 1. X equals 1 plus 1, which is 2. 2 is less than n. We're good to go, right? It's going to go through again. If I guess wrong, it'll finally kick me out. And then at that point, I will not have guessed blue. And so it'll print, sorry, you couldn't manage it in 3 guesses. Once that's done, it goes right back down into my loop. Loop is going to look at this and say, hey, y is still equal to 0 because I didn't make any way for it to not equal 0. It'll ask for me to input how many guesses do I want again, over and over again. So really, I've got 2 loops operating, one in a function that we can get out of, right? And one down here that we're essentially stuck in unless I program us out of it, right? Or unless we program ourselves out of it. All right, so a little bit more complex. There's a lot going on here. I like while loops. Some coders actually really hate while loops. They say you can do anything in a for loop that you can in a while loop. I'm not that good. I can't. I actually really need the while loops to be able to do it. And I think there are ways. I just really haven't honestly played around because I've always been comfortable using while loops. They always just made sense to me because to me they're very much like English. Hey, While something's like this, you just keep doing this, right? While I'm on the clock, I'm going to keep, adding the cog to the piece coming down the assembly line. As soon as that bell rings, right, boop, we're done. We're out of here, right? That's kind of the way the while loops work. While we're in class, this happens, right? Until something gets us out, like the bell, and we're dismissed. So anyway, I said we could do this a lot better, right? Like, for example, would we be able to program, guys, it inputting a random favorite color, right? Or can we do a list, which if that were the case, we could perhaps use a for loop to do that with, right? We've got a real problem in here as well. For example, what if I put a string into here? What's going to happen in my guess? Well, I mean, try it. I've got it running right here. I'm actually going to type the word string. Right? I've got a problem. I broke my program. And that's I don't really like for that, right? So we could program a way to do that. Okay? We could program a secret input that would allow us to exit out of the loop. Okay? So something that maybe when we input a specific thing like exit or out or something like that, that we actually can break ourselves out of the loop. We don't even have to inform people of that. That's not uncommon in programming for people to put in their own special commands that the programmer themselves know how to use and get out of things. So there's the while loop. So I gave you kind of a tricky little program to do here, right? A short turtle program utilizing a while loop, and it has to produce a different result each time it runs. And so that's kind of fun, right? It's kind of fun. And there's actually a lot of really fun things you can do with while loops and making things that aren't necessarily random either. You can actually make some pretty cool things in Turtle using while loops that will make them very different each time you run it. It's okay to ask for an input. It's okay to use the random function if you want to. It doesn't really matter to me. But there you go. For example, you can make a really cool Turtle program using a while loop that produces different shaped stars with different numbers of pieces on them and things like that.